When you think of Egypt, your brain almost certainly jumps to ancient history, pharaohs, massive stone pyramids, or maybe picturesque cruises down the Nile. Or, if you follow modern moves, you think of this.
Hundreds of protesters have died as Egyptian security forces moved to forcefully end the sit-ins staged by supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi.
Today, our perception of Egypt is dominated by the image of an iron-fisted military state, a regime where generals run everything from national security to bread factories, gas stations, and hotel chains. It's easy to look at Egypt today and assume this is just how it's always been, a volatile region stuck between ancient glory and modern military rule. But I want to show you a different Egypt, the Egypt that existed before the military state. I want to show you the precise sequence of events that led to this moment, because understanding Egypt's past isn't just a history lesson. It is the single key to understanding how an entire country's independence was quietly bought, sold, and weaponized by foreign powers, leaving behind a military apparatus that refuses to die. You might think the story of modern Egypt is going to be about religion, ancient rivalries, or desert warfare. But in fact, the story I'm about to tell you is about a single strip of water, massive debt, and global greed. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the year 1805. Egypt at this time is technically part of the Ottoman Empire, but on the ground, a self-made military leader named Muhammad Ali takes charge. Muhammad Ali looks around at Europe, which is rapidly industrializing, and says, "We are going to do that here, but faster." Over the next few decades, Egypt builds modern schools, imports European technology, builds factories, and establishes a massive, well-trained army. They start producing white gold, high-quality long-staple cotton, which becomes the envy of textile mills across the world. For a brief moment in the early 1800s, Egypt isn't a colony. It is a rising regional superpower capable of challenging both the Ottoman Empire and European armies. By the 1860s, Muhammad Ali's grandson, Khedive Ismail, takes power. Ismail is obsessed with European grandeur. He famously says, "My country is no longer in Africa. We are now part of Europe." He redesigns Cairo with wide, Parisian-style boulevards, builds opera houses, installs telegraph lines, and expands railways. But modernizing an entire country overnight requires a staggering amount of cash. And right on cue, European financiers, specifically bankers from London and Paris, show up at Ismail's doorstep with their wallets wide open. They offer massive loans, but these aren't friendly investments. They are predatory loans designed to trap the state. If Egypt prospers, the banks take the interest. If Egypt stumbles, the banks take the country. And then someone proposes an engineering project that will alter world history forever. A French diplomat and engineer named Ferdinand de Lesseps convinces Khedive Ismail to dig a shipping canal through the Egyptian desert, linking the Mediterranean Sea directly to the Red Sea. Think about what this meant for global trade in the 1860s. Before the canal, if a British ship wanted to transport tea, spices, or textiles from India to London, it had to sail all the way around the entire continent of Africa. It was a perilous 1,200-mile journey that took months. A canal through Egypt would cut that journey in half. Overnight, Egypt was no longer just a country. It was the most important trade bottleneck on planet Earth. In 1869, after 10 years of grueling labor, carried out largely by hundreds of thousands of Egyptian peasant laborers working under forced conditions, the Suez Canal officially opens. The opening ceremony is one of the most extravagant parties in human history. Royalty from across Europe flies in, operas are performed, champagne flows in the desert. While European elites were celebrating in Cairo, Egypt's financial house was burning down. The canal cost vastly more than budgeted. Combined with Ismail's lavish spending and the collapsing global price of cotton after the American Civil War, Egypt was drowning in debt. By 1875, Egypt owed over £100 million to foreign lenders, an unfathomable sum at the time. The European bankers come knocking, and Ismail has only one asset left to sell: Egypt's 44% stake in the Suez Canal Company. British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli hears about this and acts instantly. Without even waiting for parliamentary approval, he borrows £4 million from the Rothschild banking family and buys Egypt's shares. Look at what just happened here. Egypt built the canal on its own land with its own labor, and now the British and French owned it completely. Egypt didn't even own a single share of its own crown jewel. Sensing that Egypt was still on the verge of default, Britain and France decide that owning the canal isn't enough. They need to control the entire country's bank account. In 1876, they established something called the Caisse de la Dette, a commission of foreign controllers who stepped directly into the Egyptian government. They literally reallocated Egypt's tax revenues. Over half of every dollar Egypt collected from its farmers and merchants went directly out of country to pay off European bankers. Imagine another nation taking over your country's treasury department, sloshing public spending, firing civil servants, and raising taxes on citizens just to pay offshore bank accounts. Unsurprisingly, the Egyptian people get furious. A popular nationalist army officer named Ahmed Arabi leads an uprising. He rallies soldiers and citizens under a unified slogan that would echo for generations: Egypt for the Egyptians. Arabi demands a constitutional democracy, limits to the king's power, and an end to foreign financial control. It's one of the early constitutional movements in the Middle East, and it starts gaining real traction. To the British Empire, an independent, democratic Egypt was a nightmare scenario. What if a democratic parliament decided to nationalize the canal? What if they cut off British access to India? So Britain does what empires do. In July 1882, the British Navy anchors off Alexandria and bombards the city into rubble. They land thousands of troops, crush Arabi's army, exile the revolutionaries, and establish a military occupation. Britain openly claimed this occupation was temporary, just to restore order. That temporary occupation lasted for 76 years. For the next 70 decades, Britain ran Egypt behind a thin veil of legitimacy. They kept a local king on the throne who was essentially a puppet. British troops guarded the Suez Canal, British merchants controlled the cotton trade, and the Egyptian people carried the burden. During World War I and World War II, Egypt was once again used as a massive staging ground for Allied troops, leading to inflation, food shortages, and resentment. By the early 1950s, the anger inside Egypt reaches a boiling point. The culture of protest, intellectual politics, and national pride that had been suppressed since 1882 explodes. In 1952, a secret group of young army officers calling themselves the Free Officers carries out a swift coup. They force the corrupt King Farouk into exile, dismantle the monarchy, and declare Egypt a republic. And out of this group emerges one of the most monumental figures in 20th century history, Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser wasn't an elite or a king. He was the son of a postal worker from Upper Egypt. He spoke with fierce eloquence and possessed a magnetic presence. His message was simple, radical, and irresistible. Foreigners are done running our country. Item number 1 on Nasser's agenda: the Suez Canal. For decades, the Universal Suez Shipping Company had been pulling hundreds of millions of dollars out of Egyptian soil, while Egypt received a tiny fraction of the revenue. Nasser tried to secure Western funding to build the Aswan High Dam, a massive infrastructure project needed to control Nile flooding and provide electricity to the nation. When the US and Britain abruptly pulled their financial offers to pressure him politically, Nasser made a move that shocked the world. On July 26, 1956, Nasser stands before a crowd of tens of thousands in Alexandria. He gives a speech broadcast across the Arab world. He uses a secret code word embedded in the speech, de Lesseps, which signals Egyptian troops on the ground to march into the Suez Canal headquarters and seize the control of the facility. Nasser announces to the world, "The Suez Canal is our property. It was dug by our fathers. Today, we reclaim our rights." The British and French governments are incandescent with rage. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden views Nasser as a threat to British global standing. Britain, France, and Israel form a secret pact. Israel invades the Sinai Peninsula, and then Britain and France step in under the guise of restoring peace, dropping paratroopers directly into the canal zone to take back ownership. It looked like the old 19th century imperial playbook was working once again, except the world had changed. The Cold War was in the full swing, and both the United States under President Eisenhower and the Soviet Union were terrified that this imperial invasion would drive the Middle East directly into a broader conflict. Eisenhower threatens to bankrupt the British economy by selling off US reserves of the British pound if they don't pull out immediately. Humiliated on the world stage, Britain and France are forced to withdraw their forces in disgrace. This moment, the 1956 Suez Crisis, marked the official death rattle of the British Empire, and Gamal Abdel Nasser emerged as a hero of anti-colonial resistance across the global south. This brings us back to the question we started with. If Egypt successfully kicked out the foreign empires and reclaimed its canal, how did it end up as an authoritarian military state today? The answer lies in the specific mechanism Nasser used to secure his victory. To protect the young republic against foreign plots, Western intelligence coups, and domestic rivals, Nasser built the state around the only organization powerful enough to resist foreign intervention, the Egyptian military. Over the decades, under subsequent presidents Anwar Sadat, Anwar Mubarak, and now Abdel Sisi, the military transformed from a defensive force into an all-encompassing institution. Today, the Egyptian military does not just defend the borders, they run an economic empire within the state. They build highways, bridges, and luxury real estate. They operate commercial factories producing everything from pasta and bottled water to televisions and steel. They receive billions in direct tax exemptions and foreign military aid. When millions of Egyptians took to the streets during the 2011 Arab Spring demanding democracy, they succeeded in bringing down Hosni Mubarak, but they were confronting an institution far deeper than a single man. Within 2 years, the military establishment stepped back into control under General Sisi, reasserting its position as the ultimate guardian of the nation.